From a persecuted few to an organized force that changed the world. Witness the birth of the Muslim army, forged in the fires of Badr, tested at Uhud, and triumphant at the conquest of Mecca. Follow the strategic genius of the peace B letter F, DFA, and the unmatched bravery of heroes like Hamza Ra and Khalid ibn al-Walid Ra. This is the untold story of faith, strategy, and ultimate victory, a slow, sweeping aerial shot over the serene, sun-scorched deserts of Arabia. The camera glides over the sands, revealing the iconic silhouette of the Hijaz Mountains. The visuals are grand, epic. Music begins softly, a blend of traditional oud and stirring, cinematic strings. In the vast, silent expanse of 7th century Arabia, a revolution was brewing, not of swords and spears at first, but of hearts and minds. A final prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad, had brought a message that shattered the age of ignorance, but with divine light came fierce resistance. For 13 years in Mecca, the believers faced a trial of relentless persecution, their faith their only shield. They were not soldiers, they were merchants, shepherds, and outcasts. Yet, from this crucible of oppression, one of history's most transformative military forces would be forged. This is the rise of the Syrian military, not of a nation, but of the nascent Muslim community whose defense would reshape the world. Muslims being harassed in the streets of Mecca, the peaceful gathering at Dar al-Arqam, the poignant migration, the Hira, with believers fleeing under cover of darkness towards Yathrib. The command to migrate to Yathrib, later known as Medina, was the first strategic masterstroke. It was an escape, yes, but also a consolidation. In Medina, for the first time, the Muslims were not a vulnerable minority. They were a community with a social contract, the Constitution of Medina. But peace was fragile. The Quraysh of Mecca, fueled by vengeance and economic threat, viewed this new polity as an existential danger. They aimed to crush it in its cradle. The Muslims now faced a stark reality. To simply believe was no longer enough. To survive, to protect the freedom to worship, they had to learn to defend. Enter the key figures, the human pillars of this rising force. Among them, a lion whose heart was changed by faith, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib Ra. The Lion of Allah, once a fierce warrior of Quraysh, his conversion brought raw, formidable courage into the Muslim fold. He was the embodiment of protective rage transformed into divine passion, and then there was a military mind so sharp it would later be dubbed the Sword of Allah, Khalid ibn al-Walid Ra. At this stage, he was still a formidable adversary on the opposing side, a master of cavalry tactics for the Quraysh. His very existence forced the early Muslim community to evolve strategically. Leading this entire spiritual and strategic transformation was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Muhammad the Commander-in-Chief, whose authority came not from tribal lineage but from divine revelation and unparalleled wisdom. His companions, from the steadfast Abu Bakr Ra to the young, fierce Ali Ra, formed the first command structure. The political climate was a tinderbox. Medina's location threatened the lucrative trade caravans of the Quraysh to Syria. An economic and ideological war was declared. The Quraysh seized Muslim assets left in Mecca. A response was necessary for survival. The Quranic permission was granted. Permission to fight has been given to those who are being fought because they were wronged. And indeed, Allah is competent to give them victory. Quran 22:39. This was the cause, not expansion, not conquest, the preservation of the community and the right to exist. The first Muslim expeditions were interceptory to monitor Qurayshi movements and reclaim what was rightfully theirs. In the second year of the Hijra, intelligence reached Medina of a massive Qurayshi caravan returning from Syria, led by Abu Sufyan, laden with wealth that included Muslim possessions. A small Muslim force, just over 300 strong, mostly on foot with few mounts, moved to intercept it. But Abu Sufyan's messengers reached Mecca. An army of over 1,000 well-armed, well-supplied Quraysh warriors, fueled by pride and hatred, marched out. Their goal was not just to protect the caravan, but to annihilate the Muslims once and for all. The caravan slipped away, but the two armies were now on a collision course. The Muslims, severely outnumbered and under-equipped, faced a choice: retreat or stand for their very right to exist. They marched to the wells of Badr. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of Islam. 300 versus 1,000. Faith versus arrogance. A community's destiny hung in the balance. What happened at those wells would become the defining proof that in this new dawn, numbers did not decide victory. That story is next. The night before the battle, a gentle rain fell. For the Quraysh, it was a nuisance muddying the ground. For the Muslims, it was a purification, settling the dust and firming the sand beneath their feet, a subtle, early sign of divine aid. The Prophet, letter FDFA, peace be upon him, Muhammad spent the night in supplication. O Allah, if this small group perishes, you will not be worshipped on earth. Dawn broke at Badr. There, the military doctrine of the rising Muslim force was born, not impeccable leadership. The strategy was genius. The Muslims secured the water sources, forcing the dehydrated Qurayshi army to fight at a disadvantage. The Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad arranged his men in tight, disciplined ranks, their backs to the sun. Then came the moment of champions. From the Muslim lines, Hamza Ra, Ali Ra, and Ubaida Ra stepped forward. In single combat, they cut down the Qurayshi champions. The roar that went through the Muslim ranks was not just a victory, but a validated faith. The full battle commenced. The Prophet, letter FDFA, from his strategic post threw a handful of dust towards the enemy, a symbolic gesture that, to the believers, felt like a storm. The outnumbered Muslims fought with a cohesion the disparate, prideful Quraysh tribes lacked. Angels, as the Quran would reveal, fought alongside them. The result was a stunning, decisive victory. Key Qurayshi leaders were killed. The Muslim army had passed its first impossible test. It was a victory of faith and discipline over numbers and arrogance. A year later, the Quraysh returned for revenge at Uhud. The Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad, based on a dream, chose a defensive position with the mountain of Uhud at their back. He placed 50 archers on a key hill with a firm order, do not leave this position, even if you see birds snatching us away. The battle began with another brilliant Muslim advance, led again by the heroes of Badr. Hamza Ra was a whirlwind of destruction, but as the Qurayshi line broke, the archers, thinking the battle was won, left their post for spoils. Khalid ibn al-Walid Ra, commanding the Qurayshi cavalry, saw the gap and exploited it with devastating precision. The Muslim ranks were attacked from behind. Chaos ensued. In the chaos, the Lion of Allah, Hamza Ra, was martyred. A grievous wound to the heart of the Ummah. The Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad himself was injured. Rumors of his death spread, causing despair. But he stood up, wiping blood from his face, declaring his survival, rallying the believers. They retreated to the mountain, regrouping. The military lesson was searing. Disobedience to the command, even for immediate gain, could turn victory into a painful lesson. Yet, Uhud was not a defeat. The Quraysh, despite their tactical success, were too battered to press on to Medina. The Muslim army survived, bloodied but unbowed, learning the critical lesson of unwavering discipline. Then came the ultimate test. A confederacy of over 10,000 enemies, Quraysh, Bedouin tribes, and the Jewish tribe of Banu Qurayza, marched on Medina. Facing overwhelming odds, the Muslims did not meet them on an open field. Upon the suggestion of Salman al-Farisi Ra, they dug a massive trench, a revolutionary defensive strategy in Arabian warfare. For nearly a month, the Muslim army, now acting as a defending garrison, held the line. The siege was broken by divine wind, internal discord among the Confederates, and shrewd diplomacy. The Battle of the Trench showcased strategic innovation, communal effort, and the fact that the Muslim polity could withstand a concerted, prolonged assault. After the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, a masterclass in strategic patience, and the successful expedition to Muta, where Khalid ibn al-Walid Ra first showcased his legendary tactical retreat, the balance of power shifted irrevocably. When the Quraysh broke the treaty, the Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad, marched with 10,000 believers, the largest and most organized force Arabia had ever seen. This was no longer a band of survivors, but a disciplined army of conviction. They entered Mecca virtually unopposed. conquest was bloodless. The Prophet, peace be upon him, Muhammad, declared a universal amnesty. Go, you are free. The very city that had expelled and fought them was now liberated with mercy. The core of the Syrian military, its command structure, its logistical capability, its unifying faith was now complete and triumphant. Mecca was liberated. The heart of Islam was secure, but the call to deliver the message continued. Now, the gaze of this tested, hardened, and merciful army would turn north towards the superpowers of the age. The lessons forged in the deserts of Hijj, as were about to be applied on a world stage. The aftermath of this rise and its eternal lessons are what we explore next. The fall of Mecca was not an end, but a beginning. The Fath, or opening, as it is rightly called, opened the floodgates of the human heart. Within years, almost the entire Arabian Peninsula entered the fold of Islam, not by the sword of conquest, but by the magnetic pull of a united, just, and powerful community. The rise of the Muslim military had achieved its primary goal, security for the Dawah. But its impact on Islamic history had just begun to unfold. The very next major battle, Hunain, proved that victory was from Allah, not from numbers. The massive Muslim army, flushed with success of Mecca, initially faltered against an ambush. It was the Prophet's, peace be upon him, Muhammad, unwavering stand and the core of the early believers, the Muhajirin and Ansar, who turned the tide. This was the final military lesson, to never attribute success to oneself. Soon after, the expedition of Tabuk, facing the Byzantine Empire, demonstrated the logistical capability and supreme sacrifice of this army, marching into the northern desert at the harshest time of year. Though no major battle occurred, it established Muslim power on the international frontier. With the Prophet's, peace be upon him, Muhammad, passing, the ultimate test of the system he built arrived. Many tribes apostatized, believing their covenant was with Muhammad. Letter F, DFA personally. The very survival of the Ummah was at stake. Caliph Abu Bakr Ra, with unshakable resolve, dispatched the armies of Islam. It was here that Khalid ibn al-Walid Ra, now a Muslim, became the sword of Allah in truth. His lightning campaigns, like the chain of victories at Yamama, crushed the rebellion with breathtaking speed and tactical brilliance. This crisis proved the Muslim military was not a personal militia, but an institution capable of preserving the state under new leadership. The impact was world historical. The army forged in Badr, Uhud, and the trench became the instrument that carried the message of Islam beyond Arabia. Within decades, the two decaying superpowers, Persian and Byzantine empires, would fall before them. But why? It was not mere militarism. This was an army forged in a different crucible. It carried with it the lessons of Badr, divine help. They offered justice to the oppressed masses of those empires, who had been crushed by taxes and tyranny. The military rise was the protective shell for the seed of faith to take root in new lands. Throughout this rise, divine support was a recurring theme. The Quran mentions the angels at Badr, the rain that preceded it, the fortification of hearts, the violent wind that broke the Confederates at the trench. These were not mere coincidences to the believers. They were tangible affirmations that they were on the true path, that their struggle was for a purpose beyond material gain. The greatest miracle, perhaps, was the transformation of the men themselves. From tribal raiders to disciplined soldiers of God, from seekers of booty to seekers of martyrdom. So, what were the enduring lessons? First, that true strength lies in taqwa, God consciousness, not in numbers or gear. Second, that unity and obedience to legitimate leadership are non-negotiable for success, the lesson of Uhud's archers. Third, that Muslims must employ wisdom and innovation in their endeavors, as with the trench. And fourth, that victory is an opportunity for mercy and consolidation, not vengeance and oppression, the eternal lesson of the conquest of Mecca. The turning point was not a single battle, but the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which seemed like a setback but was, in the Quran's words, a manifest victory. It taught strategic patience and diplomacy. From the sands of Arabia, a force emerged that changed the course of civilization. But its true legacy is not in the lands it reached, but in the hearts it transformed and the principles it established. What does this meteoric rise, born in persecution and crowned with mercy, say to us today? The final reflection is for every one of us. We have journeyed through history, through battles and triumphs, but this story is not locked in the past. The rise of the early Muslim community is a timeless blueprint for the human spirit under pressure. It's a mirror held up to our own lives. For you today, facing your own battles, be they internal doubts, external oppression, or the struggle to build something good, these companions are not distant legends. They are your spiritual predecessors. Their journey whispers a powerful question: what is the source of true strength? Imagine the emotional weight Hamza Ra carried, not just the physical fight, but the burden of protecting his beloved nephew letter FDFA, the weight of being the lion for a community that looked to him. Think of the young Bilal Ra, tortured for his faith, finding in the military structure of Islam not revenge but liberation and honor. Reflect on Khalid ibn al-Walid Ra, the military genius who, after accepting Islam, had to prove his loyalty anew, fighting not for tribal glory but for God, and famously weeping on his deathbed because he longed for martyrdom. These were humans with fears, passions, and flaws. Their triumph was the triumph of their cultivated hearts. So, what are the morals for us? Against disunity, your batter may be standing firm with your family, your community, against social pressures that pull you apart. Unity, in truth, is power. Against materialism, your Umayyad test is when you are tempted to abandon your principles, your hill, for a short-term gain, a quick profit, a moment of disobedience that could cost you long-term victory. Against overwhelming odds, your trench is the innovative, patient, collective effort you make to protect your faith, your family, your values from the overwhelming siege of modern distractions and ideologies. Against the desire for vengeance, your conquest of Makkah is the moment you have the power to retaliate against those who wronged you, but you choose dignity, mercy, and a higher path. That is the ultimate victory. Our battles today are rarely physical. They are battles of ideas, of identity, of perseverance. The early Muslims were outnumbered in the media of their day: poetry, tribal rhetoric, yet their consistency, their character, and their ultimate success became their message. For us, in an age of digital noise and moral confusion, our strategy must be the same: unwavering integrity, compassionate communication, and the deep, disciplined knowledge of our faith. Our sword is truth, our shield is good character, our army is the global community of believers, united by creed, not ethnicity. Strip away all the strategy, the heroes, the timelines. At the core of this military rise was one thing: a man unshakable, resolute faith. The conviction that God is real, that the hereafter is the true destination, and that this life is a test. That faith turned fear into courage, greed into generosity, and tribal pride into universal brotherhood. Without it, they would have been just another desert raiding party, lost to history. With it, they became the catalysts for a civilization. You are the inheritor of this legacy. You carry the spiritual DNA of Hamza's courage, Khalid's strategic mind, Bilal's resilience, and the Prophet's, peace be upon him, Muhammad, mercy. Your Syrian military is not a physical force, but the army of your deeds. Every time you choose honesty over a lie, patience over anger, charity over greed, and forgiveness over revenge, you are enacting their victory. You are fortifying the trench of your soul. You are marching towards your own Makkah, a state of inner peace and divine pleasure. The desert sands of the 7th century have settled. But the war between faith and despair, between justice and oppression, between unity and division, rages on in every generation. The question history asks you now is, on which side will you stand? Will you be part of the confused, disparate armies of the age, chasing fleeting desires? Or will you align yourself with that timeless, principled rise? Will you strap on the armor of taqwa, raise the standard of Iman, and march forward with the discipline of the companions? Your story is still being written. Make it one that centuries from now will inspire another generation to rise. If this story of faith, resilience, and ultimate triumph inspired you, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our deep dives into Islamic history. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Which moment from the early Muslim military struggles resonates most with you today?